Okay.
Yeah, no, I can see you. Okay, we are officially live up on YouTube. But we've got about 20 people waiting, so I'm going to start to let people in.
Okay.
And we can just see where people are calling from. I'm going to I guess I'll just see what happens with the camera. Sometimes when people come in, they start talking. If they do that, I will pin the camera to one of us.
You know what you're talking about. Just
yeah, I got this. Sarah, you're going to start us off. Anna, you'll go second because we're waiting. Emily's coming. She's at an event right now, but she will be here shortly.
And is there some conversation?
Yeah, usually we'll ask a question or so, Anna, kind of to warm you up before handing the mic completely to you. And then afterwards, yes, there's questions. And in fact, we even have an email. Someone emailed a question who couldn't be here tonight and who wants to watch the video afterwards. So yeah, all right. I'm going to start letting people
in. My dad.
I see a lot of regulars in the audience, which is always really cool to see.
Oh, nice.
Welcome back, Hannah Bay. We've got the chat on for those of you guys who are coming in. If you want to say hi to the authors, give us a shout. Where are you calling from? This is actually our first international event with Sarah Blake calling in from England. And Sarah, are you in London or just close to London?
We're like an hour south of London.
Okay. Very cool. Yeah, this is the benefit of the internet event, is that we can be everywhere. We can have writers from all over. Where else are people calling from? I know Brooklyn is in the house for sure.
I see California. Sarah Stone.
Westchester,
hello.
Hi.
It's so nice to see regulars. I see Panina Roth is here. I see Danielle Lazarin and Hannah Bay, who both were past readers, are here. Welcome back. We're going to wait just another minute or two as people kind of file in, and then we'll get started. I'm just looking at the chat here. Pencil PA is in the house. We're in PA. I'm from outside of Philly.
That's where Sarah's from too, because she's my agent.
Oh, that's right, Sarah. Where you're from, near Philadelphia too, right?
Yeah, I was living in Haverford before we moved.
Okay, very cool.
And then I grew up on the other side in Morristown, New Jersey, like by Cherry Hill. So I did both sides of Philly.
Nice. Yeah, Haverford, I feel like I remember I might have mentioned this to you before, like cool record stores.
Right, yeah.
Like the main line, I used to go and get like bootleg CDs and things like that.
Yeah, where are you from?
Norristown, which is like not too far from the big King of Prussia Mall.
Yeah, that's where the train line ends that we lived on for a while in Havertown when we lived there.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, no, I was a big mall rat, but like just with like comic book stores and bookstores, and so it's always I worked in bookstores all through high school and college, but it was always like, it wasn't like cool indie bookstores. It was like, the mall, Walden Books, B. Dalton, all that kind of stuff. Cool. All right. I see a couple other people coming, and we're going to get started in just a moment. Wow. Tucson, Arizona. Welcome. San Francisco. Very cool. South Philly and the New School. Nice to see it. Tucson, Arizona. What is Connecticut, New Jersey. What's Tucson like?
Hot today.
It's hot. I'm trying to see. There we go. Nice. Yeah, I can imagine. It's hard to. That's when I think of Tucson, Arizona. I think of heat. It's nice and cool here today, and it's been beautiful in Brooklyn. But today it's been a little cool. Cool. Well, welcome everybody. Welcome to the Antibody. I'm Brian Gresco. I'm here in Brooklyn, in my writing studio. We got three amazing authors here this evening, but actually only two are here with us at the moment. Sarah Blake is here calling in from outside of London. Hi, Sarah. And Anna Solomon is here. Anna, where are you calling in from? Massachusetts?
I'm in Gloucester, Massachusetts. Yeah, Cape Ann, where I grew up. I live in Brooklyn normally, as you know.
Welcome. And Emily Mandel will be joining us in a little bit. She is at an event and will be dashing across the ethers here to join us in a little bit. I'm really happy to be here with you guys. It's in the roller coaster that is quarantine life in New York City. These events have been a real highlight for me, as opposed to, say, 3:30 in the morning last night when I was wide awake and worried about everything and the future. But let's just put all of that aside. Let's put the news aside. Let's put the world aside for a moment, because we're all here now, me here in Brooklyn and you where you are. So please take a moment, just join me. We're just gonna take a nice deep breath and just kind of settle down, because we've got some really great readings coming at us, and afterwards we'll have a little time for some conversation. I see some more people are coming in the house, and some of you guys have been here before, and if that's the case, welcome back. And if you are new, let me just explain quickly how this works. Your mics are on mute right now. I ask that you please keep them on mute. We don't have a stage, but we do have a microphone. So we're gonna honor the authors when they have the microphone, as each author reads for us for a little bit. And at the end of the event, there will be time for a Q&A, so be ready for that. And the chat I do keep on in public, so you can show your appreciations of the author as the authors come up and after they're done. So without further ado, get your keys clicking and your fingers tapping, and let's welcome our first author, Sarah Blake. Sarah Blake's books include Naamah, Let's Not Live on Earth, Mr. West, and a chapbook named after death. In 2013, Sarah was awarded a literature fellowship from the National Endowment for the Arts, which is pretty cool. She currently is joining us from the UK, but she's lived most of her life in the Philadelphia area. And she has a second novel, Clean Air, which is forthcoming from Algonquin Books. Hi, Sarah, welcome.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for staying up late into the night and you know, and being here to read to us. This is really exciting. So you've got it. The microphone is yours.
Okay, great. Yeah, so I'll show, there's Naamah, well, backwards a little. And I'm gonna read just parts that I'm really excited to read. I usually just read from the beginning over and over again, so this is really fun. But it does mean it needs a little explaining. So in the book, it's the story of Noah's Ark from Noah's wife's perspective. And at the very beginning of the book, she takes up swimming. And as she continues to swim, she meets an angel under the water. And then the angel leads her to this crazy underwater spectacle of a villagey, crystally mecca that she's made for dead people under the water. And there's a bunch of dead children there, because it's mostly dead children that have kind of gotten lost from the flood. So that's where we're going to start. And then I'm going to jump around, because the book works in a lot of short sections. And so I'm going to just skip them. And so it'll seem more fluid, maybe. We'll see. Okay. Naamah cranes her neck to look at the structure now, to take it all in, the dozens of arches, dozens of spires. It looks like a palace, and Naamah's in awe of it. Where did you get the inspiration for this place? The heavens. Right, of course you did. You don't believe me? No, I do. Then why say it like that? Because you're impossible. This is impossible. I've probably banged my head on something in the water, and I am dying alone somewhere. No, she says, you're fine, Naamah. And why do you say it like that? Because you are fine, but you might also be despicable. And Naamah's face gets hot with a shame that she's not sure she deserves to feel. A group of children have come up behind Naamah. One asks, why is she despicable? Another says, I think she's beautiful. Can I braid your hair? Okay, Naamah says. She feels the hands of many dead children run through her hair, but one takes the lead, gathering a thick plait of her hair on the left, parting it from the rest, running a dead girl fingernail along her scalp to make the line neat, and then doing it again on the right, making 3 neat sections. Then she begins to braid. The first child watches the dead girl's steady work and asks again, why is she despicable? Before the angel can respond, Naamah speaks. Because I question God's will. God made the flood, didn't he? The child asks. He did. The child leans over and whispers in Naamah's ear, then I am despicable too. Naamah feels tears coming on, stinging, salty enough to turn all the floodwaters into a sea. She tries to focus on the small tugging of her hair. The angel says, you could never be despicable, child. Of course not, Naamah says. The child looks unconvinced. It's the way I act, Naamah says, motivated by my question. What do you do? Another child says. I have hurt people. Did you defeat them? One asks. No, not that kind of hurt. Lions hurt other animals, a child says. That's true. I would be okay if there were no more lions. Would you? Naamah asks. Yes. If lions didn't hunt the animals who grazed, didn't move them around the fields, then the fields would not yield and many more animals would die, Naamah explains. That's sad. Naamah nods. We don't need to eat anymore, the girl says, the girl who has been braiding Naamah's hair. She peeks out from around her back. Your braid is finished. Thank you, Naamah says. She runs her hand along it. Will you braid my hair now? The dead girl asks. Okay, Naamah says. The girl moves around and stands in front of Naamah, who runs her fingers through her dead girl hair. It feels a little like water, and yet still like hair, as if water were running over the hair constantly without wetting it. It feels like how she thought the angel would feel, Naamah's only estimation of holiness. When Naamah has finished the braid, she has nothing to tie it with. The angel reaches down and from the water creates a string of crystals around the end of the braid. Thank you, the girl says, and all the children run off laughing. Naamah turns to the angel. Is that how you made all of this? Yes. Can you show me again? The angel thinks for a second, then constructs a small bird of crystal and places it in Naamah's hands. The bird looks sturdy in the angel's hand, but Naamah can hardly feel it. She balances it in one hand and pinches the bird's tail with the other. The crystal of the tail collapses and lengthens into a thinner crystal. But for a second, Naamah thinks that she's made the tail longer with another crystal, that she has the same power the angel has to create. And while that second was exhilarating, Naamah feels great relief at not having that power, at having only the ability to deform the crystal. Now, knowing her small value in this place, her near worthlessness, Naamah is newly excited to explore it, to run her hand along every crystal wall and doorway. And then I'm going to skip a lot of pages. So she keeps coming back to the water to visit all the children. And this one day, she ends up with this one little girl who's quite strange. They're all strange, but so is she. Another day, Naamah returns and finds one girl playing alone. Hi, Naamah. Hello. Would you like to play with me? I would. That's why I came. The girl smiles and shows Naamah a game where they clap their hands and then slap them with each other. First the backs of their hands, then the front. And after the next clap, they must do it twice, back, front, and so on, as far along as they can get without messing up. They make it to 6. The girl is a mess of giggles. She falls forward into Naamah's chest. When she sits back up, she looks as if she wants to speak, but she lifts up her clothing first. My chest looks the same as every other child's, Naamah. It's flat, smooth, bony, brown, and my nipples are as small as my fingertips. Yes. She lowers her clothing again. The women here, the men, every chest is different. Each woman's breasts are a different size, some covered in stretch marks, some with larger nipples than others, some that stick out all the time. The men are wider and slighter, hairy and not, sagging and not. Yes. I like how different everyone looks. If all the children held their clothes over their heads, I don't think you'd know which one I was, would you? I don't know. You wouldn't, I don't think so, the girl says. Will I grow breasts? Naamah holds back tears. No, darling. The girl doesn't say anything. Are you okay? Naamah asks. I'm dead. I heard the angel say it. Naamah reaches out and takes the girl's hands. It makes sense. And you aren't dead. No. Do you want to be dead? Naamah shakes her head. Is it bad to be dead? No. She pulls the girl in and holds her. No, of course it's not. It's just another way to be. A way that doesn't grow. Not your body. The girl pulls away from Naamah. There are things I'll miss out on. A few things. Like I'll never have a child. Yes. I'll never have sex. Yes. You and the angel have sex. Naamah nods slowly. I've seen you. Naamah tenses a little. It's okay. The girl rubs Naamah's arm how a child would, her hand flat and light on Naamah's skin. Not quite a comfort, but a gesture of comfort. If you've already had sex and you have children, why then? Why not die? I want to sometimes. I think you should, says the girl. I will, but for now I want to stay with my children. I want to meet my grandchildren. Will you tell them about me? If you want me to. The girl nods quickly. I don't know your name. The girl stops nodding. I don't remember it. Naamah doesn't know what to say. Tell them you met a girl who could never grow up, the girl says, pulling back to look into Naamah's eyes. But she imagined that if she did grow up, she would be tall and fat with giant breasts and giant nipples and stretch marks everywhere, and she would have a dozen children and they would all eat cream on everything and run around laughing, and they would paint her body with their hands, hundreds of purple stains and smears until she looked like a god. But Naamah regrets it as soon as she says it. Yes, like a god, the dead girl says.
Wow, thank you, Sarah.
Yeah. Thank you guys for listening.
Yeah, thank you. That was amazing and so sad. Oh my goodness. Thank you. Really beautiful. And my apologies. I was saying I've for some reason gotten the name with soft A's and not hard A's. So
I think that's right too. I mean, none of us are pronouncing it the way it would have been pronounced 10,000 years ago in another language. So I think we're okay.
Cool. Well, thank you. That was so wonderful. I'm partnered here with Greenlight Bookstores, is my local indie bookstore here in Brooklyn, and they're wonderful. And they have copies of Sarah Blake's Naamah, which is now in paperback to order or digitally. So please, support our authors and support our independent bookstores, and pick up a copy. And if you want to find Sarah on Twitter, I'm putting her Twitter handle up there as well. And I noticed, because I saw you mention this before the reading, Sarah, you've got twin parrots on your shirt. Very cool.
2 by 2. Yeah.
Very cool. Thank you so much again, and thanks to the audience for all the love. Moving right along, our next author is Anna Solomon. Anna is the author of 3 novels, Most recently, I have managed to grab these from, I think, the Book of V. And before that, Leaving Lucy Pear. And before that, The Little Bride. And Anna is a 2-time winner of the Pushcart Prize. Her short fiction, essays, and reviews have appeared in the New York Times Magazine, Plowshares, One Story, the Boston Globe, Tablet, and elsewhere. Anna is the recipient of awards from McDowell, Yaddo, Breadloaf, the Rhode Island State Council for the Arts, and the Missouri Review, among other places. And her short story, The Lobster Mafia Story, was chosen as Boston's One City, One Story Read. Anna is co-editor with Eleanor Henderson of Labor Day, True Birth Stories by Today's Best Women Writers. And previously, she worked as an award-winning journalist for National Public Radio's Living Earth. Please get your fingers, keys clicking and your fingers tapping, and give Anna Solomon a warm welcome. Hi, Anna.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Of course, happy Pub Day.
All the love and feel it. Thank you.
Yeah, well,
it's amazing to be here. I look like I'm at like a campfire telling a ghost story, right? Sorry, I'm working on the lighting. Can you see me like this?
I can see you. You're looking like you've got like you're telling us a story from the attic kind of vibe, which
Okay.
which
well,
feels,
I am in the attic, in fact.
Yeah, that feels appropriate.
So that's appropriate. Escaping my family, and I felt, actually listening, I loved hearing Sarah read, not only what she was reading, but how you read. I wish she would like come and read to me every night. It's just like, so relaxing. Thank you for that. It's a real pleasure to be here. And this is my publication day, so I'm glad to be able to celebrate it with all of you. So my new book, The Book of V, I'm supposed to do this, is out today. And so it's interesting because there's a part of this book that has a lot of kinship with what Sarah was reading, in that there's one thread of this book that takes place in ancient Persia, 462 BCE. That's sort of an arbitrary date, but a long time ago. That involves a character from the Bible, Queen Esther and Queen Vashti. The V comes from Vashti, the banished queen. But I also have, there are 2 other storylines, and one is a senator's wife named Vivian Barr in 1970s Washington, D.C., sort of torn between convention and liberation, so to speak. And then a contemporary mother of 2 named Lily in early 2016 Brooklyn. And I think just to change things up, I'm going to read from Lily's point of view, or rather from, yes, it's from Lily's point of view. So this is a little ways into the book. All you need to know is that Lily is going to a sewing party to learn how to sew, because she has decided she's going to try to make costumes for her daughters for the Jewish holiday called Purim. I don't think you really need to know more than that. Okay. Atop a kitchen island gleams the party's centerpiece, a massive turquoise sewing machine from the 1960s. The hostess, Kyla, repeats the vintage as each guest arrives, explaining that the old machines are superior if you treat them right. This one was her grandmother's, she adds, and all the women ooh and ah at this, Lily included, though the machine fills her with fear. She imagined this would be a needles and thimbles kind of sewing party. She thought she might cut out some pieces of cloth, wrap them toga style around the girls and call it a day. But Kyla has laid out patterns, which as far as Lily can tell, appear to be for dresses that entail sleeves and necklines, and in one case, a pocket. Lily wants to whisper something snarky, but she doesn't know any of the other women well enough to trust they'll take to her snarkiness, and she's realizing as they begin to pepper her with questions that they know each other very well. It's palpable, the togetherness of women who've stood around like this on countless other occasions in other kitchens. They are a group. Lily, too, has a group, but she and her friends have never invited a stranger into their midst. Their wine isn't as good, the atmosphere they create isn't as cheerful, and they don't have dedicated playrooms like Kyla. On the other hand, Lily's group includes women of various shapes, colors, and hair textures, and they are skilled at using all these facts, from the mediocre Sauvignon Blancs that ostensibly allow them to spend money on more important things, to the squished apartments, to the au naturel hair, to make them feel superior, more authentic somehow, more real to women like these. These women, a couple of whom appear no older than 33, which would make them 13 years younger than Lily, ask Lily with near jubilance how long she's been in the neighborhood and how old her kids are and whether she works and what her husband does. And Lily, overwhelmed and self-conscious, answering as best she can, wonders at how easy it would be if you mixed up these women and Lily's women and stood them in a line to tell which ones belong to which group. It's a depressing thought, because it suggests that they are all basically in permanent uniform and that their superficial differences, these women's blown dry hair and diamond rings, etc., as opposed to Lily and her friends with their chunky bracelets and scuffed boot clogs like something out of Heidi, actually portend deeper ones like what they do with their pubic hair, and deeper ones still like what they think and feel. One of the women, upon hearing that Lily used to teach at the city colleges, says, "That's so cute." And Lily, feeling mean and small, excuses herself to go check on the children, half hoping one of them will be sick, so she'll have to take them home. But she finds them cheerfully rolling and cutting homemade Play-Doh with the other children at a low, large table probably made in Finland. Ro looks up first, then June, both girls with almost absurdly happy expressions on their faces. And Lily feels the kind of deep, unadulterated love for them that she experiences when they are asleep, or when she cups the fat arch of June's foot in her palm. This feeling in this moment feels as if it could be felt eternally if only she lived in this apartment and had this table and this particular bespoke Play-Doh. Lily smiles and waves until, in unison, like happy Finnish cows, her daughters turn back to their work. In the kitchen, Kyla asks Lily to give everyone a brief primer on Purim, which causes Lily, who feels at once defensive of and embarrassed by her tribe and unreasonably irritated by being apparently its sole representative at this gathering, to issue forth a brief and conflated account of the holiday and the story that sounds something like lots of drunkenness and misogyny, but also female worship, which you could argue is a form of misogyny, and a so-so king and a good queen, an evil side guy. By the end, she's so turned around, she adds a final ambiguous punchline. It's kind of a burlesque. And then Kyla, undaunted, begins introducing the women to the machine, identifying its various parts and what they do. Lily is hungry. In her nervousness, she has drunk too much wine, but the food has been laid out at the opposite end of the kitchen, so that to get to it, you must walk away from the group and make a thing of wanting it. As Kyla talks, the machine has many parts, including one called a feed dog. Lily's fear mounts. Where are the thimbles? Where is the softcore sewing party? But then Kyla is turning to her and looking deep into her eyes, so deeply that Lily notices the remarkable blue of Kyla's irises and wonders if she wears colored contacts, and saying, "You're up first, Lil, you'll do great," as if they've known each other forever. And her voice is quiet now and tender, as if she senses Lily's struggle. "Do you mind?" Kyla asked Lily. And before Lily can figure out what she's talking about, Kyla is behind her, taking Lily's hands into her own. "They'll start with a straight stitch," she says, and suddenly the machine is purring and Lily, guided by Kyla, is sewing. She feels a pleasurable shock, as if she's jumped into cold water. There's vibration and fabric and Kyla's hands on hers, and the satisfied grumble of the machine and the cheers of the women gathered around to watch. And at the small of her back, the gentle press of Kyla's belly. And Lily realizes not only that Kyla has a belly, like anyone, but also how long it's been since someone has taken the time to teach her something. Since graduate school, at least, and even then they expected her to teach herself most of what she didn't know. There is a weightless quality about it, something she remembers from childhood, a sense that as long as she follows, she'll be okay. And now Kyla asks if she wants to try the foot pedal, and Lily looks down and sees there's a foot pedal, and Kyla's foot slides off it to allow Lily's to hop on. And instead of internally mocking the $500 boots Kyla is wearing, though noting the fact of them she admits may be a form of judgment, she mostly just feels grateful. She's grateful for this woman who is teaching her to sew, grateful that she cares, grateful for her earnest and unabashed domestic ambitions. So what if Kyla is a little too perfect, her cheekbones a little too good, her blouse a little too drapey yet lean? So what if her name is Kyla, as if in her spare time she's a yoga instructor? She has been nothing but generous and kind. Lily is sorry for her snarkiness. She's embarrassed as her back relaxes into Kyla's stomach at what she suddenly understands to be true. that although her friends, if they could see Lily in this moment, would crack a joke, every one of them would in fact like to be in Lily's spot. They tell themselves they don't care about being good homemakers, but they peek around each other's apartments just the same, commenting on how one person seems never to have any toys on her living room floor, or how another has managed to put together non-virtual family photo albums. They keep their tone flat as if they aren't praising, but merely observing. And then they move on to other subjects deemed more worthwhile, husbands or politics or the careers they've put on hold. It's in this way that they are different from Kyla's women, after all, not in their actual behavior, for they've all chosen to prioritize their children at this point in their lives, to embrace that word so redolent with resistance, motherhood, but in their attitude. Woo. Never mind that fridge calendars and organizers and doctor's appointments and school lunches and diarrhea and grocery shopping take up the bulk of their time and energy. Never mind that they do feel pulses of pride when they experience success in one of these arenas. They have a phrase that encompasses all of it: shit and string beans, which came out of an old feminist novel one of them read once. She forgets what it was called, a name they can throw at almost everything they do. Shit and string beans, and they laugh at themselves and pour a glass of wine and put the kids in front of a screen and settle into complaining about things large enough that they can't even pretend to solve them that day, like the subway or the absurd and asinine entertainment of Donald Trump's run for president, or pollution, a husband's infidelity, their own lusts, which they say they can't imagine actually indulging, yet talk about in great detail. For example, the father Lily met recently, who looked like he could be a fisherman from her hometown. Granted, half the men in Brooklyn dressed like fishermen these days, but this man, Hal was his memorable name, looked like the real deal, and then some, a beautiful, sensitive, sophisticated fisherman with a red beard and strong hands that Lily described to her friends in extravagant detail. She spent a week fantasizing about him, mushy with a kind of lust she hadn't felt since Rosie was born. She and Adam had sex twice in that time. That too, the women laughed about, because since when was twice a week getting it on? Since a long time. Back and forth across the cloth, Lily goes. It's satisfying, even though she isn't accomplishing anything yet, and totally involving, so that for a time she forgets her hunger and her friends and her laundry and her mother and her daughters and Purim and dresses, until she feels Kyla's warmth depart at her back and realizes she's sewing on her own. Thanks.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you. Oh my gosh. So many layers in there, so many feelings. I love it. I love the self-aware snarkiness too. Yeah, please show some love for Anna Solomon on her publication day. Congratulations again. So cool to hear you read from that. I'm putting up a link here. Please, if you've been looking out there in the past couple of days, you've been seeing perhaps the reviews of the Book of V have been just stellar, well-deserved. And I put a link up there to purchase a copy from Greenlight Bookstore. So please support independent bookstores, support Anna, and also read in a really amazing novel while you've perhaps got some time at home. Cool, thank you so much. All right, our next reader, Emily. Emily, I saw you come in.
Hello, hi. Can you hear me?
Hi, yes.
Excellent.
Very cool, welcome.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and I'm excited because I saw this this setup during your book launch. You've got a very official microphone.
Yeah, I've got a very serious microphone. I kind of love it. It's super retro. I did an event with Politics and Prose, and they're pretty hardcore about their microphone requirements. They sent me a link, so yeah, I'm hooked up for this kind of thing.
That's awesome. All right, Emily St. John Mandel's fifth novel, The Glass Hotel, was recently published in Canada and the United States and is forthcoming in the UK in August. Her previous novels includes Station 11, which was a finalist for a National Book Award and the Penn Faulkner Award, and won the 2015 Arthur C. Clarke Award, among other honors, and has been translated into 33 languages. And she's joining us tonight from New York City, where she lives with her husband and daughter. So please get your fingers tapping and give Emily Mandel a warm welcome. Emily.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me on your reading series. This is such a pleasure. When I started doing Zoom events, I thought it would be kind of creepy and weird, and it's totally not. Yeah, it does feel like talking to people. And Anna, happy publication day. I know it's a weird world none of us could have imagined. But, yeah. So I thought I'd read for a few minutes from the new book, The Glass Hotel. For the section I'm going to read, the background is that it's about a woman named Vincent who's quite young. Up until very recently, she was a bartender in British Columbia. But as the story opens, she's moved to Connecticut with a very wealthy man. This isn't really a spoiler because it's on the jacket, but he's running a Ponzi scheme. It's not a legitimate investment scheme. So I think I'll just jump right in. Oh, and she goes swimming every night. She's a little bit obsessive about exercise. Diving into the pool at night. In summer, Vincent dove through the lights of the house, reflected on the surface. In cold weather, the pool was heated, so she dove into steam. She stayed underwater for as long as possible, testing her endurance. When she finally surfaced, she liked to pretend that the ring on her finger was real and that everything she saw was hers. The house, the garden, the lawn, the pool in which she treaded water. It was an infinity pool, which created a disorienting impression that the water disappeared into the lawn or the lawn disappeared into the water. She hated looking at that edge. Her contract with Jonathan, as she understood it, was that she'd be available whenever he wanted her, in and out of the bedroom. She would be elegant and impeccable at all times. You bring such grace to the room, he said. And in return for this, she had a credit card whose bills she never saw. A life of beautiful homes and travel. In other words, the opposite of the life she'd lived before. No one actually uses the phrase trophy wife in conversation, but Jonathan was 34 years older than Vincent. She understood what she was. There were adjustments to be made. At first, living in Jonathan Alcaides's house was like those dreams where you find a door in your kitchen that you never noticed before, and then the door leads into a back hallway that opens up into a never-used au pair's suite, which opens into an unused nursery, which is down the corridor from the master bedroom suite, which is larger than your entire childhood home. And then later you realize that there's a way of getting from the bedroom to the kitchen without ever setting foot in either of the two living rooms or the downstairs hall. In her days working in hotels, Vincent had always associated money with privacy. The wealthiest hotel guests have the most space around them, suites instead of rooms, private terraces, access to executive lounges. But in actuality, the deeper you go into the kingdom of money, the more crowded it gets. People around you in your home all the time, which is why Vincent only swam at night. Every time Vincent looked up, somebody was nearby, sweeping or dusting or talking on the phone to the plumber or trimming a hedge. It was a lot of people to contend with, but at night the staff retreated into their private lives, and Vincent could swim at peace without feeling watched from every window. "I'm so glad you're enjoying the pool," the house manager said. "The pool design consultant spent so much time on it, and I swear no one ever used it before you got here." She was in the pool when she first met Jonathan's daughter, Claire. It was a cool evening in April, steam rising from the water. She'd known Claire was coming over that evening, but she hadn't expected to surface and find a woman in a suit staring at her through the steam like a goddamned apparition, standing perfectly still with her hands clasped behind her back. Vincent gasped aloud, which in retrospect wasn't endearing. Claire, who had obviously just come from the office, was a very corporate-looking woman in her late 20s. "You must be Vincent." She picked up the folded towel that Vincent had left on a lawn chair and extended it in a get-out-of-the-pool kind of way. So Vincent felt that she had no choice but to climb the ladder and accept the towel, which was irritating because she'd wanted to swim for longer. "You must be Claire," she said. Claire didn't dignify this with a response. Vincent was wearing a fairly modest one-piece swimsuit, but felt extremely naked as she toweled off. Vincent's an unusual name for a girl, Claire said, with a slight emphasis on girl that struck Vincent as uncalled for. I'm not that young, Vincent wanted to tell her, because at 24, she didn't feel young at all. But Claire was possibly dangerous, and Vincent hoped for peace, so she answered in the mildest tone possible. My parents named me after a poet, she said, Edna St. Vincent Millay. Claire's gaze flickered to the ring on Vincent's finger. Well, she said, we can't choose our parents, I suppose. What kind of work do they do? My parents? Vincent asked. Yes, they're dead. Claire's face softened a little. I'm sorry to hear that. They stood staring at one another for a beat or two. Then Vincent reached for the bathrobe that she'd left on a deck chair, and Claire said, sounding more resigned than angry now, did you know you're 5 years younger than me? We can't choose our ages either, Vincent said. Ha, said Claire. Not a laugh, just a spoken word. Ha. Well, we're all adults here. Just so you know, I find this situation absurd, but there's no reason we can't be cordial with one another. She turned away and walked back into the house. Vincent's mother had read a lot of poetry, having formerly been a poet herself. When Edna St. Vincent Millay was 19 years old in 1912, she began writing a poem called Renaissance that Vincent must have read 1,000 times in childhood and adolescence. Millay wrote the poem for a competition. The poem didn't win, but it nonetheless carried an electric charge that transported her from the drudgery of New England poverty to Vassar College, from there into the kind of bohemia that she'd dreamt of all her life. A different kind of poverty, the Greenwich Village circa 1917 variety. Poverty, but with late-night poetry readings and dashing friends. The point is, she raised herself into a new life by sheer force of will, Vincent's mother had said. And Vincent wondered, even at the time, she would have been about 11, what that statement might suggest about how happy Vincent's mother was about the way her own life had gone. This woman who'd imagined writing poetry in the wilderness, but somehow found herself sunk in the mundane difficulties of raising a child and running a household in the wilderness instead. There's the idea of wilderness, and then there's the unglamorous labor of it, the never-ending grind of securing firewood, bringing in groceries over absurd distances, tending the vegetable garden and maintaining the fences that keep the deer from eating all the vegetables, repairing the generator, remembering to get gas for the generator, composting, running out of water in the summertime, never having enough money because job opportunities in the wilderness are limited, managing the seething resentment of your only child who doesn't understand your love of the wilderness and asks every week why you can't just live in a normal place that isn't wilderness, etc. What Vincent's mother probably wouldn't have imagined, a life, an arrangement, in which Vincent wore a wedding ring but was not actually married. I want you close, Jonathan said at the beginning, but I just don't want to get married again. His wife, Suzanne, had died only 3 years earlier. They never said her name. But while he didn't want to marry Vincent, he did feel that wedding rings created an impression of stability. In my line of work, he said, managing other people's money, steadiness is everything. If I take you out to dinner with clients, it's better for you to be a beautiful young wife than a beautiful young girlfriend. Does Claire know we're not married? Vincent asked him the night Claire appeared by the pool. By the time Vincent had come in and showered, Claire had already left. She found Jonathan alone in the south living room with a glass of red wine and the Financial Times. Only 2 people in the world know that, he said, you and me. Come here. Vincent came to stand before him in the lamplight. He ran his fingertips down the length of her arm and then turned her around and slowly unzipped her dress. But what kind of man lies to his daughter about being married? There were aspects of the fairy tale that Vincent was careful not to think about too much at the time, and later her memories of those years had an abstracted quality, as if she'd stepped temporarily outside of herself. I think I'll stop there. Thank you.
Wow, thank you, Emily. Thank you so much. That was awesome. Everyone show some
Thanks.
love for Emily in the chat there. And congratulations, the reviews on this book also have just been absolutely stellar.
Oh,
And
thank you.
I'm putting that out there, the link to purchase a copy from Greenlight Bookstore. Please support independent bookstores, support Emily, putting out her Twitter handle as well. There's been a question already. I have a question to start things off too, but I want to start with this, and which is, can you tell us more about the microphone? Like, what is the make of it?
Oh yeah. It's a Yeti microphone, YETI. But as I say that, I realize it just says blue right here. So I don't know if I have the brand name right. Yeah, Google Yeti. I think that's what it is. And if that's not what it is, hit me up on Twitter and I'll look for the box because I know it's around here somewhere. But yeah, it's really good. I think it makes a big difference.
And has it been different being on, and I guess Anna's just about to kind of go into launch mode, and I'm not sure, Sarah, if you've got other events planned, but Emily, you've been on the kind of like digital book, like, circuit now for a couple of weeks. Has it been really different? I guess, because I feel like last time I talked to you, you were actually in a hotel in Australia.
Yeah.
And you were going all over the place in the live events, but what's it been like just doing everything from your home?
It's so different, which I guess is the most obvious statement of all time. But yeah, there are really great things about going out on the road, like meeting interesting people who love books and getting to go to Australia. That was amazing. On the other hand, with an evening like this, I can have dinner with my family and then do an event. And that's amazing, to not be in hotel rooms for weeks at a time. Yeah, I've actually been surprised by how pleasant the Zoom events have been. I was thinking it would be really weird, but it's not. And I guess partly because we're all in lockdown, like getting to see people who don't live in my house, like, hi, it's a real pleasure. Yeah.
That's very cool. Anna, you've just started doing this, right?
I did my first one. I've done a few things, but the first sort of event thing was last night. And I was surprised at how good it felt. I think it has been, maybe not obviously, like at first, because my book came out today. So obviously the pandemic happened before my book came out. There was no moment of like running around and doing things in the world. And it was very it was heartbreaking when I realized that was what was going to happen. And it still feels really hard, but then I'm realizing that I do feel really connected and I feel all of your presence here. And there's an energy to it, and I'm this is my second one of these, and I'm feeling really grateful, like so grateful that we have this technology, which is not something I've really ever felt grateful for before, because I don't think about it very much. So I do feel grateful for it, and yeah, it's sort of like, okay, this is another way to do this. So yeah.
Yay,
I'm grateful to people like you, Brian, who have put together this. It's like suddenly there's this universe that has just grown up of people. I mean, not bookstores are doing a lot of it, but also individuals sort of taking on this role of creating community in this way. And I think, all of us as readers and also as writers, just really grateful.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's also just, it's been really helpful for me every week to have an opportunity to come and hear amazing authors read, and like you said, just have a chance to see there's other people out there, and we're not alone. Because yeah, it's easy just to let weeks kind of fly by. Sarah, is this your first time doing an online event, or do you have other things that have you done other readings since the paperbacks launched?
No, I haven't even thought about it. I probably should. It was just kind of like a whole slew of things getting canceled that are, I think, delayed to hopefully be in person next year. So, I hadn't had anything on the books that even thought about being switched to virtual. So this is the first, but it's been great.
Cool. Well, it was such a treat to hear you read. I've got, if you guys got questions in the audience, please use the chat to write them in and ask them. I do have a question that someone emailed before the event, which is really cool. Author Robin Ryan is revising her first novel, which is historical fiction, and she's interested to hear from all three of you about any advice you have about structure, specifically structure in order to maintain tension in a narrative. What advice do you have for someone who's I don't know, trying to tighten the bolts there of their narrative tension?
I might suggest being fearless. Like, readers are smart and they can cope with really complex, crazy structures. Like, think of Jennifer Egan's A Visit from the Goon Squad, which is one of my favorite books of the past decade or whatever it's been. And that book is so fragmented that it was marketed in some places as a short story collection. And honestly, you could read it either way. So yeah, I think be fearless with the structure. And it's like, to increase narrative tension, you just cut everything that isn't fast that's my technique anyway. And it's hard to murder your darlings, but you can reuse your darlings as like short stories down the road. I've done that a few times. So yeah, I guess that's the advice I'd give.
It's good. It's good. I also, I guess I would add, definitely agree with that. And also, as you're sort of trust the story to teach you what the structure needs to be. I think that goes with historical fiction, but also any fiction, so that, that a given story, not that there's only one structure that can exist for that story, but that, if you listen to the story and work with it enough, it will get clearer what the structure needs to be. And that you can play. I mean, one of the reasons I think the kind of fearlessness that Emily's talking about works is that the tension between different pieces of a story create a lot of that kind of the suspense that the person asking the question is talking about, to my mind. So a lot of those, they're like in the junctures is where a lot of that suspense can exist. And I would say, read a lot of the kind of work that you love and that makes you feel like you're sort of like waiting to find out what will happen, and see what it is those writers are doing in those moments that really work for you. And play with them, because that's where the craft is happening. And copy what they're doing, not like take the words, but play with like, oh, that structural move really worked for me here. I'm going to try this out and see how it goes.
Sarah, what about you? Because you've got like a family with a zoo on a boat, and yet like the narrative is it's so fascinating and absolutely wonderful. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, that was the hard part, right? Is it's a story everyone knows in a lot of regards. So like what really could happen? But at the same time, it's the stakes are so high and nobody talks about it like that, like how dangerous it must be and smelly and loud and horrible, like the arc itself. And yeah, so just kind of giving in to my setting and the world building that I felt like was happening as I like tried to make the arc as real as I could, which is a bizarre thing to say because I've heard from readers and it's how I felt too, is like I never really detail too specifically the size or shape of the arc so that you don't ever feel like like it feels like it's endless, and it is to hold all the animals. So I had a lot of but I follow the rules for myself of not knowing what's going to happen next, so that's how I create tension for myself. I never know where my story is going. Maybe I'll know like 50 pages out, but I never know more than that, and I try not to. That's and I worked in that book in really small sections. I mean, mostly because it was my first switch from poetry over to fiction, and I largely distrusted myself, and I was like, well, if I just make perfect little sections that I trust then I can keep building on them. And then just having like threads of what was most important to my main character. I mean, because I only had one main character, which is like always like a goal of mine so far has been to just like get engrossed in a woman that I adore. So Naamah, I fell in love with. And so it's like her past before the flood, and then her present on the ark, and then her mysterious life in under the water, and then her mysterious life in dreams. And it's like you can't it's a very wacky structure that didn't work for everyone, but it made a delight to write.
It's cool. It's very cool. I also like what you said too about like short sections, because it is amazing how short chapters can really help propel narratively. And I wonder if that even is just like, it forces you as a writer to think in smaller chunks, which helps to move the pacing of the story along. There's a great question here from a former reader of the series, a wonderful writer, Danielle Lazarin. Hi, Danielle. Danielle is curious how each of these writers prepared in research, but also psychologically, to write about characters who live lives so distant in geography, time, etc., from their own lives. Especially since time and experience and travel feels so important right now. Anna, do you wanna start with that? Not just research, but psychological preparation of writing ancient Persia and Esther. And
yeah, I mean, the research is like a whole other. I mean, what very briefly, the research part, the part that was the best part is that no one really knows, and that all the research sort of led me back to the fact that most of the sources on what life might have been like at this time in ancient Persia lead you to the Book of Esther. Like, so it's just this circle. And for a long time that was sort of seen as the history. And then like, and some people do see it that way. Obviously I don't, I see it as a work of fiction. And so it gave me this license to just do what I wanted, which is great as a fiction writer. And it's interesting when you, like my first instinct. So I don't think that I'm that conscious of it, but when I'm really aware, I think I do a lot of reading, and I read, the research I did on that part was in the book itself, but also in much of the commentary and interpretations that have been written in the thousands of years since. But in terms of traveling there, I think a lot of it is the same as I do with any other character. It's like this very deep, vivid imagining. I tend to not be aware of this until a question like is asked like this of me. I realize that I do spend a lot of time with my eyes closed, sort of like sitting there and doing some sort of I don't know, it might be from my days when I used to act when I was younger. It's just this very sort of like, I don't know, I'll sit and I'll kind of like, my hands will move. It's just some way in which I like enter the world. And that is the only thing that I can offer. I mean, I don't know. And what I guess the thing that comes to me with that question, and then I'll pass it on, is that for me, I think was harder for me to access the characters closer to me in a way because they did feel, especially Lily, because her trappings are so similar to mine. And so in some ways it's very easy to access them, but I still had to then put up this wall of like, but this something needs to happen here. This is a story. This is not my life. And so there were challenges in sort of crossing that divide that felt much easier to kind of like slip into this ancient Persian world, which was largely one of my own sort of just like, all right, let's go. Let's see what I can do.
Emily, what about you?
I don't really do much preparation for anything writing wise, to be honest. Obviously life in a pandemic is like 95% preparation, but yeah, with writing, I just kind of wing it. I feel like I develop the characters kind of the same way I develop the plot, and probably like a really boring, unromantic way, which is I just do a million rounds of revision until they ring true to me. And there is sometimes some research involved for me in terms of the character's profession. Like in The Glass Hotel, I had to figure out how Bernie Madoff's Ponzi scheme worked, because although every character in the book is fictional, the crime is the same. So, things like that, and that'll inform a character a little bit. But yeah, I just kind of wing it and then revise it until it kind of rings true to me.
Sarah, what about you?
Yeah, for me, it was like the psychological state I was in is what pushed me to write the book. Like I was a mess after the 2016 election and was like, how does a woman get through hard things? and I'd been writing all these poems about women in the Bible and women in Greek myths, and I just kept obsessing over Naamah stuck on the ark, and I couldn't get her out of my head. And I was like, if she got through that, if I could figure that out, maybe I have a chance. but yeah, and then research was a delight because I'd like get to a point where I'd be like, oh, I need to talk about an animal. And I'd be like, oh, I'm gonna look up more things about animals. So I did a lot of research that never got anywhere near the book. That was just like, animals are great and fascinating. Yeah, so I did a lot of that, and I had the same problem where like the arc supposedly took place so long ago that it's like you can't really get research about it. So you just start making a lot of I left a lot of things vague, which I felt like was a little bit of a cop out. Like when even I say the girl lifts her clothing, it's because like I didn't want to get more specific than that because I don't know what anybody's wearing. Yeah, they dressed probably, maybe not. Yeah, so there's a lot of research that I went into with like all of my passion, which was I guess mostly animal related, and then a lot of research that I was like, well, that's not the most important thing here. And then obviously I loved reading the Bible over and over again. And I'm always surprised how I've still missed things, even though it's like this big, the story of the ark, it's like so small. And I still like, yeah, would find details. I was like, oh, I didn't really capture when like God starts the wind as he's done forgetting about them. And it's like, oh yeah, I like maybe missed my moment there, or something.
That's funny. I love when research also, like takes you, just becomes this kind of, I don't know if it's sometimes procrastination, but also just becomes this like passion thing that you're just interested in. I interviewed Karen Russell a long time ago when Swamplandia came out, and she said that she'd written about like 60 pages or so on like swamp ecology and alligators that, just was out of total interest in the setting and not at all related to the book, that her editor was like, you've got to get rid of the alligator mating habits. No one really cares.
Yeah, I relate to that. Yes.
And I see there's some great questions here. I want to be mindful of all of our authors' time, especially Sarah, because she's 5 hours ahead of us here on the East Coast, so it's very late for her. So I guess I've got a question that was lobbed towards Sarah and Anna specifically, but I think Emily, we can find a way in for you too, which is just why did these particular stories from the Bible call you, attract you into writing them? And I guess for Emily, my twist on that would be the Ponzi, Madoff's Ponzi scheme. Like, what was it about that you were reading the news and that seeded a novel? Anna, do you want to start with that?
Yeah, because I think I did that one a little bit. So
yeah, I mean, so I had always, as a girl growing up, the Jewish holiday of Purim is a very strange holiday for a religious one. I don't need to get into the details, but it's like full of, like masks, and not the kinds that we're using these days. Masks. It's a carnival holiday. There's a lot of drunkenness. Like people are actually ordered to become so drunk that by the end of the celebration, they won't be able to tell the difference between the good person, like the hero and the villain. So it's different and strange. And I had always, as a kid, there would be the play, there'd be all these adults in costume, and there was the Queen Vashti, and she was usually often dressed like as a prostitute or maybe a leper. She was clearly bad, but then very quickly she was banished. She was just gone. And then the play could begin. And it was, clearly she was just this, a foil for the story. But it always stuck with me, like just that question, like what happened to her? Why, what happened and why? And then later, I think there's the question of like, well, wait a second, does this story that I've been told about her actually match up with the story itself? Which I think is a good question to be asking about, most of the stories we're told. And especially when there are these dichotomies drawn between like good and bad, or in this case, like virtuous as in Esther and wanton for Vashti, or aggressive and meek, like a lot of these categories we apply especially to women. And so I was drawn to that, and this question of the, sort of this absence that makes way for a presence, and what happens if I try to figure out what that absence is made of and who this woman was. And then things got much bigger from there, because so I transposed my Vashti character into 1973 Washington, D.C., but then I also decided to have a sort of second wife like Esther, contemporaneous, a contemporary character, and then to also explore sort of how the book of Esther came to be, and who Esther really was. And you do, as the book goes on, and not without spoiling, like also eventually find Vashti. But yeah, so it was these questions that I wanted to explore, and I guess this sort of mystery. Yeah.
Emily, what about you?
The Ponzi scheme. So, for anybody who doesn't remember this or, didn't care at the time, Bernie Madoff's Ponzi scheme collapsed in late 2008. That was a 65 billion with a B dollar financial crime. So I was kind of fascinated by the scale that this crime had been perpetuated over decades. But more than that, I was fascinated by the staff. It wasn't like this billionaire was going to sit down at his desk and format all those fake account statements by himself. Like he had a staff for that. About 6 or 7 people went to prison, had been working for him. And at the time, I had a really great day job. I was an administrative assistant at a cancer research lab at the Rockefeller University in New York. I really liked my coworkers. And what I found myself thinking about was just the camaraderie that you have, with any group of colleagues who you like, or you could say any group, period. Now think of how much more intense that would be if you were all showing up at work on Monday to perpetuate a massive crime. Like it's kind of crazy, those group dynamics, the tensions there. So yeah, the first line of the book that I wrote eventually ended up being kind of in the middle of the book. It's in chapter 10. And it begins, we'd crossed a line. And that was kind of my starting point. I was interested in the Ponzi staff. So yeah, I was going to write a very tightly focused novel about this financial crime, the perpetrators, the victims, the people kind of caught up in the periphery. But I don't write from an outline, and that means my books can take some kind of weird directions sometimes. So what I found after years of revision was I'd basically written a ghost story with a Ponzi scheme in it. So it's kind of a weird book at this point, but yeah, that was the starting point, and that was what drew me to it.
That's cool. I love it. A ghost story with a Ponzi scheme. I'm in. I'm there. And Sarah, do you want to say anything about your forthcoming book? Because it's really cool that you've got it's done at this point. It's in.
Well, I think my editor's in here, and yeah, it's due to her very soon for the next round of edits. But yeah, it's a complete vision, and it's more, it's not based on any. I made it all up. It's a little sci-fi. It's set in the future, and everybody's wearing masks. Luckily for not a virus, because then it would have been way too creepy to revise. But for other reasons, air quality reasons, and it's so it's different.
That's really cool. Well, I'm excited about that. I'm looking forward. It's nice to have something to look forward to. And thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Anna. Thank you, Emily, for joining us tonight and reading and answering these questions. It's been awesome. You guys should all check out their books. They're such amazing and imaginative authors. It's really been such a treat to have you guys all together. The Antibody will continue as long as quarantine does. At this point, I'm booked to the end of June, and we'll see how long it goes after that. But next week, we'll be back on May 12th with Laura Bogart, author of Don't You Know I Love You, Peter Kispert, the author of the short story collection I Know You Know Who I Am, and Matt Ortile, author of the nonfiction book memoir The Groom Will Keep His Name. And I'm noticing now all books that have long titles. So come on back and we'll talk about titling. If you want to find out more, I have a full schedule of readers up online. And if, there was some great questions here. I'm sorry we didn't get to all of them, but come find us on Twitter and keep the conversation going. Thank you again to the readers. Thank you, guys. Thank you in the audience. Thanks everyone for coming. Thanks Greenlight Bookstore and the Literary Hub. This will be archived on the Literary Hub's virtual book channel. Until next week, you guys stay vigilant and safe and healthy and optimistic, and keep reading books. Have a good night, everybody.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Brian.
Yay.
Thanks, Sarah and Emily.
Thank you, guys.
Real pleasure.
Likewise.
Take care. Have a good night.